has David Cameron done enough to get people on the property ladder? Later in the programme, I'll be playing an interview I had with the Prime Minister earlier today about the Help to Buy scheme and some other issues we'll throw in as well. Home buyers in Bedfordshire, Milton Keynes are in the top 10 in the country for those taking up the government's Help to Buy offer. The figures just released show that more than 450 people in central Bedfordshire alone have taken up either equity loans or the mortgage guarantee. Now, although the government is hailing this as a success, there are critics who say it's just fueling another housing bubble, and it still leaves many people struggling to afford a home. Well, Jonathan Davis is an economist and wealth manager from Hertfordshire. Jonathan, very good afternoon to you.
Hello, Roberto.
Welcome to the programme, Jonathan. What's your take on Help to Buy, Jonathan? Is it a good idea?
Politically, it's been a fantastic idea because, as far as I could see, when the Chancellor talked about it, launched it in the budget of last year, early 13, I thought I was listening to Gordon Brown again, because it was we'd got into a state of massive debt bubble, creating a housing bubble, and there was Osborne creating another debt bubble. But why were they doing it? Because rising house prices buys votes. And of course, there was the Euro elections a few months ago, and then there's a general election next year. And naturally, a policy such as this takes some time to get going, took a few months, and clearly by the second half of last year, house prices were rising and the economy was getting some growth.
Jonathan, but is buying a home, getting your foot on the property ladder and getting a mortgage, is that really a debt? Most people see it as a way of getting a home, a house.
Yeah, well, they see it because for 40 years, house prices have trended up. There have been times where they've fallen, but on the whole, house prices have trended up massively. Obviously, everyone knows that. So therefore, the assumption in that view is that house prices can never fall long term. So whatever price I buy at, however much I borrow, I'm always going to be okay financially. Nothing could be further from reality. You know, there's a thing outside of the UK called the rest of the world, and the global economy is at best fragile. And the UK is currently unique in the developed world.
But should we worry, Jonathan, about what they're doing overseas? We're doing okay, it would seem, here.
In the very short term, we're doing a little bit better than okay. But this is my point, Roberto. It's all about buying votes. When the global economy actively turns down, it's already slowing. That's a fact. It's undeniable. The UK will not be immune to what's happening elsewhere.
Jonathan,
and that's when all these people who've got themselves these massive debts lose their jobs. What on earth do they do then? I'm afraid they're going to lose their houses.
Well, listen to what the Prime Minister has to say about the scheme, the Help to Buy scheme, and why he thinks critics like you are wrong. He says the Help to Buy scheme is not fueling another housing bubble or keeping house prices artificially high.
First of all, if we look at house prices and compare them with incomes, they're pretty much at the same level they were in 2005, some years before things got out of control. That's the first point I'd make. The second point I make is, of course, more than half of Help to Buy has been helping people to buy newly built houses, and we all know you need to build more houses in our country. One of the reasons the builders weren't building, as I put it, is, the builders won't build if the buyers can't buy, and the buyers can't buy because the lenders weren't lending. What we've fixed is the lenders are now lending, and so therefore house building is beginning to grow in our country.
Very loud clock in the background. What do you reckon?
I reckon we should focus on his statement, the lenders weren't lending. Why weren't the banks and building societies lending? Because they knew that the housing market was in a state of collapse and they weren't going to lend on assets that were going to fall. Therefore, they'd lose a lot of money on those bad debts.
Even if it does take a downturn, Jonathan, hang on, even if there is a massive downturn across the rest of the world and across the United Kingdom, surely we in the South East will be protected from this.
Well, that is an astonishingly naive and politically correct statement, but it bears no reality whatsoever.
Jonathan, I don't think anyone can accuse me of being politically correct. But if you live in Hertfordshire, Buckinghamshire and some parts of Bedfordshire, those house prices are only going to go one way, and that's north.
Yeah, that's right. And in 2008, the last time there was a global economic shock, house prices in the southeast didn't fall 20%. Yes, they did. They were bailed out. The house prices were bailed out because they slashed interest rates. The base rate was 5% in 2009. They took it to 0.5%. It's still there. They also bailed out the banks. That's the interesting thing, Roberto. They can't slash the base rate ever again because it's practically zero.
Okay.
What happens the next time there's a global economic shock? It was 6 years ago. I'm telling you, and I'm telling your listeners, it's around the corner within the next couple or so years.
OK, now one person who won't be struggling, whatever happens to the housing market, and we'll talk about this later on, huge reaction on our Facebook page, is the case of this footballer, Radamel Falcao, who's being paid a reported £346,000 a week, tax-free, Jonathan. He'll be all right, won't he?
Of course he will. Anyone who's earning an awful lot of money is not going to be generally affected by any economic downturn. We're talking about normal people in Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire, people who are earning 30, 60, maybe £90,000 a year. That, of course, is the bulk of the population. And these are the people who've been enticed into borrowing a lot of money in the brainwashed assumption that house prices will never fall. And by the way,
someone's
who are we
earning
ultimately
60...
borrowing this money from? We're borrowing it from our children. We're creating an intergenerational terrible situation.
Okay. Jonathan, if someone's earning £60,000 or £90,000, surely they'll have no worries at all. It's plenty of money.
No, that's simply not true, because as a wealth manager, as a financial planner, I know that most people spend to their income. So they also borrow as much as they possibly can. So no, it's only the super wealthy who will effectively be materially unaffected by the next downturn. And that is the thing that the BBC doesn't get. The BBC seems to put out that because we're growing now, therefore we can extrapolate that for the next 50 years. Oh my God, we only had a crash 6 years ago in 2008. The time before that was 2000 to 2002. There's another one generally expected round the corner.
Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager from Hertfordshire. A lot to take in there.